Hi, everyone. Welcome to Agatha's session, How to Fast Track Remote Monitoring. We're going to start in about 4 minutes. We're just waiting for 10 after the hour when more people are joining in. So hang in.
Barb, I know we're broadcasting. I'm off mute for just a second and wanted to be sure that my audio still remains clear. You're on mute.
You sound great, Ken.
Thank you.
Okay, let's get started. Welcome, everyone, to Agatha's session on how to fast track remote monitoring. Today, Ken Lownie is going to be giving you a primer on remote monitoring technologies and how to put them into practice quickly. My name is Barb. I'm the marketing director at Agatha, and I'm just taking you through a few housekeeping items before we turn it over to Ken and he gets cracking on all the great information. So we have, we're in Zoom, so if you're familiar with that, which most people are, there's a Q&A at the bottom. Any questions you have, just let us know and we'll make sure that Ken answers them. And also, if you're having any issues or anything, just send us a quick chat and we'll help you out. The slides will be available. You just have to drop Ken an email at kenlowney@agathalife.com. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Ken.
Thanks, Barb. Internationally here, Barb is sitting up in Canada. I'm down in New Hampshire, and we're all connected through Zoom. Thank you all very, very much for connecting. I have my video on for just a moment just to say hello, let you connect a face with a name. I am going to turn it off because the focus is on the material. And in these days of working from home, I have concerns about bandwidth. So I am going to go ahead, stop sharing my video, say goodbye. Nice to meet you all. And switch over to the slides. So I work for Agatha. Agatha is a software company. My goal today is to tell you everything I've learned and focused on in the last maybe 8 weeks about virtual clinical trials, but specifically about the remote monitoring function. That is the clinical trial monitoring function done remotely. As I said, I'm coming to you from New Hampshire. I live here on a small farm, and today is haying day. So I want to apologize for any noise in the background as the tedder specifically comes by. It's very loud. As you can see, I've got 3 pigs, 6 goats, and yesterday I had 14 chickens, but today, a sad day, we have 13 chickens. So we lost one. Let me go ahead and jump into my topics. So I'm going to talk about 4 things. I'm going to talk about remote monitoring as an opportunity, which is, I think, the right way to talk about it. I'm going to talk about solution requirements and choosing and deploying a solution in a fast path or sprint-based model. As far as scope, I want to be real clear about what I'm trying to do today. It's a huge topic. Virtual clinical trials is an enormous topic. That's, a whole 3-day conference. Even remote monitoring is a big topic. And I could be talking about all different aspects of remote monitoring, legal, commercially, the FDA's perspective. My focus is more on the technology. So this is really a session about fast tracking, implementing technologies for executing a remote monitoring strategy. That's where I'm focused on today. So I'll be touching on other things. And I hope no one's here for remote monitoring, as in I want to hear my patient's heartbeat remotely, because that is remote monitoring, but of a different sort, a horse of a different color, as they said in The Wizard of Oz. So I'm here about remote monitoring technologies and implementing and choosing them quickly. I have to do a quick introduction on monitoring, clinical trial monitoring, but many of you listening in right now are the experts, more expert than me. As I mentioned, this has been about an 8-week study for me. I've been involved in the life sciences software industry for a long, long, long time, longer than some of you have been alive, I bet. But my focus traditionally is on the sponsor and CRO side, not the site side. So I've had a lot of learning to do, and it's been fascinating and fun. So I'm going to share some of that. Again, apologies if any of this is pedantic, redundant, condescending, because you know more about it than I do. We're going to talk about the monitoring function for just a second to set the table. We're going to talk about the move to remote for a minute, and then grab the FDA's perspective on this. So this is section 1. These are the subtopics, and here we go. So most of you, as I said, know more than I do about monitoring. Monitoring of clinical trials is a requirement. It's a regulatory requirement, and it has a bunch of sub-requirements, if you will, based on the guidelines. You all know that ultimately it's the sponsor who is responsible to ensure adequate monitoring, but that it's often a delegated responsibility to a CRO or to a subcontractor of some other type. And that the nature of monitoring is based on guidelines, and the extent, the specific tools, the objectives, all have to be defined as part of the plan for the study, and specifically the monitoring plan. That's the most basic thing I could say, and most of you knew that. And then straight from the source, what is monitoring according to ICH? The purpose is 3 things. Make sure humans are protected, the rights of the patients. Make sure that the trial data is accurate and complete. And make sure that the trial is executed as it is documented in the protocol with its amendments. Those are the basics. The big thing I would add is also the qualifications of the participants. So that's it. That's what monitoring is. As most of you know, monitoring has been going on a long time. It's a well understood, well-worn process, and it's been typically done with on-site visits. The classic 1 to 2 day visit on-site by a monitor directly within the clinic, working alongside the study staff. That's the tradition. Just a side mention of the quality function. I'm really focused on remote monitoring, but it's such a close cousin to the quality function that it's worth a note. And again, most of you know what the quality function is, and there's whole conferences about that as well. But what I want to point out is captured along the bottom of the slide, the whole focus on audits, findings, audit reports, corrective actions. There's another area of studies that can be done increasingly remotely. I'm not focused on it, but you'll see there is overlap in the type of systems we're going to be talking about. So I believe that the right set of solutions are really solutions for remote monitoring and remote quality management. I'm keeping it short for today. So what's the scope of monitoring? This is the last slide at the elementary level. To assure the qualifications of the people, as I said, assure the protocols being followed, ensure the documentation is complete and accurate, in particular the essential documents and separately the source content. This seems to be the centerpiece for a lot of solutions. It's all about the documentation. And part of my thesis today is that the right solutions have to do more than share documents. That monitoring does not equal simply documentation and the examination thereof. So you'll hear that again and then. Of course, there's SDV, source data verification, and to confirm the analytics and statistics, that is, that the actual conclusions and findings are accurate. So that's what monitoring is. What about remote monitoring? Pretty simple, right? I used the cross-out model to say an opportunity created by the COVID-19 crisis, and then I corrected myself. It's accelerated. The opportunity's been here. Subject of many articles, lots of conference sessions, discussions with the FDA in the whole space of centralized monitoring, remote monitoring, decentralized trials. Lots of words in here that have been increasingly the focus of the evolution of clinical trials. But my point right now is that while that's been going on for the past decade, COVID has taken the idea of remote monitoring and taken it from an interesting topic, something we should all work towards. There's reasons economically and quality, and now it's clearly a critical requirement. We have to incorporate remote monitoring so that trials can keep moving when we can't travel to sites. So why hasn't it already happened? This is a simple view of 3 barriers, behavioral. This is part of my learnings, as I said, about understanding sites better and better. Sites are busy. They're busy places. They're, I won't say necessarily understaffed, but there's not a lot of excess capacity. They have ways of working. Their focus is on their patients. And there's a natural resistance to change. That, oh, you want me to not use a paper binder. Oh, you don't want me to use the way I've been doing this before. You want me to log into this complicated system. I've never done that before. I'm not that comfortable with technology. So there's behavioral barriers. There's regulatory. And then you can say there's real regulatory barriers, and then there's perceived regulatory risk. And I think it's the latter that's the bigger issue. It's not that these things can't be done or aren't permitted. It's that people aren't confident, and no one wants to be the first to fail an FDA audit, an inspection, doing something that they thought was perfectly fine and isn't. So there's, as always, at least in the case of the FDA, what the guidance says and how it's interpreted and what people think is okay. Questions like, is it really okay to put patient data in that system? Can I redact it? How do I hide things? So there's concerns there. And then there's economic concerns of who will pay for the additional tools. Is this part of a chargeback system to the sponsor for the licenses? Is the sponsor providing the software? Do sites have to pay something? Who do sites charge for the additional work that they have to do? So these are some of the obstacles that have been there. And I'm not here today to present solutions to all of these. I think we're making progress on all of them. My focus is on technology, and to be honest, technology is not an obstacle, meaning we have the technology. There may be barriers to using it, ease of use, et cetera, but the functionality that's needed to do remote monitoring is certainly available. What does the FDA have to say about remote monitoring? Well, it starts with some fundamental things that they've been saying for a long time. that we don't need 100% SDV, that we can use a risk-based approach, that we can determine where to focus our monitoring based on perceived risk and history of the site. The FDA says, of course, whatever you're going to do has to be documented, whatever methods, tools, schedules have to be documented. They've been saying this for a long time. I've got a reference down here to some of that guidance. But what they've said more recently in March and updated in June, in the guidance that the FDA issued related to the COVID crisis, I'll just read it. If planned on-site monitoring visits are no longer possible, sponsors should consider optimizing use of central and remote monitoring programs to maintain oversight of clinical sites. So there it is. They are not the obstacle. But being the FDA, they're not telling you exactly how to do it and what they're going to permit and not. They're just saying you should consider optimizing them, the use of them. So classic guidance from the FDA. They're saying the right things, but not being perfectly comfortably clear. So what I tried to do in that first section is a primer on monitoring for those who are catching up, a discussion about remote monitoring and the state of remote monitoring, and trying to point out that where we are now is at a point that was evolutionary and now suddenly is critical, that the COVID crisis says, okay, it's time to really move forward on this. So let's look now at the technology side. And what I've decided to do here is bring you inside the world of a software company. My first slide says, I'm speaking to myself right in front of you. Ken, if you're going to have a solution for remote monitoring, the first thing is you must understand the world of sites. Sites are different than sponsors. Sites are different than CROs. Many software companies like mine know CROs and sponsors very well. Less smart about sites. So sponsors, we all know, talk about a trial master file. I found that if I started talking about a trial master file with sites, they're like, you clearly don't focus on sites because otherwise you'd be talking about my binder or the investigator site file. Sponsors tend to have a study perspective. One study, many sites, as do CROs. Sites are dealing with multiple studies, each with different processes and systems. So they have layered on complexity if they're dealing with multiple studies. Sponsors have a lot of money. That's just true. Sites never have enough money and time and people. Sponsors are great big businesses. Sites are sometimes very small operations with not enough people to do what they need to do. Sponsors care about the data. And I won't say sites don't care about the data. Of course they do. But they care first and foremost about patients. So getting in the mindset of the sites, if you're going to talk about remote monitoring, is critical. That was one of the first things I tried to do. Now let me tell you what I learned about the process, what really has to happen for remote monitoring to happen. On this first slide on the right, I'm trying to capture the idea that there are multiple sites. There are different site perspectives. Site 1, Site 2, Site 3, and they each want to have a place that they know is safe and secure for their study documents, for the investigator site file documents or binder contents. They need to know, here's a spot where I put this stuff and only I can see it. It's not shared with other people, etc. The monitor has a different perspective. I think of it as they have a backdoor to that ISF repository where they can look at documents. So this is the documentation side. Documents go in from the right and they're read on the left. And the monitor can see multiple studies. Each site only sees their own study. Pretty simple, right? Now, if we go just a step further, we can add some complexity. What does a monitor want to do? They want to review and see documents. In most cases, they don't want to have the ability to change them, print them, download them. They just want to see them and add comments, never change the content. They may want to add a note, a monitoring note about overall activities, the equivalent of the yellow sticky if they were on site. In my opinion, they might want to assign tasks to people to remediate a problem like a missing signature. And in my opinion, there's a great functionality we can provide to move an item from the ISF to the master file if it's truly done, final, and approved. So that's sort of the picture. We have these three perspectives. Sites see their own studies. Monitors see multiple studies they might be the monitor for. and sponsors really have a TMF perspective of the world. Hopefully that makes sense. That's sort of how I've come to think of it and learn about it. So what are the requirements? I'll get on my high horse for a minute because I'll be blunt. I hate the way that all of us go about specifying and buying software. It's a strong statement. But many of you know the world of RFPs. You know that we write technical specifications. We write hundreds of statements that start with the system shall. The system shall be 21 CFR Part 11 compliant. The system shall be HIPAA compliant, etc. Those are requirements, and it's a traditional way of documenting systems. To me, it's not the best way. But here are some in that model. So here's a set of requirements for compliance, for security, and again, emphasizing that only staff and monitor can access the information, that the documents can be locked down and changes to them and actions taken to prevent them. That the site staff has to be able to really easily upload. We can't ask site staff to learn multiple complex systems from multiple sites. These systems have to be drag and drop dead simple. And we need a lot of integration capabilities, import and export. We need to, as I just said, push documents to the TMF. And the right systems will have an open API, application programming interface, typically today in the cloud world, a REST API, so that we can connect this system to other systems, whether that's an EDC system, a CTMS system, lots of ways we might want to interconnect things so that people can, appropriate people with appropriate access, can access and move documents. I know there's some questions building up. I'm going to ask Barb to start reading those, and I'll come to them at the next break. So hang on for a moment. I'll go through the user stories first. I was on my high horse a minute ago about excessively detailed specifications, as in the system shall, the system shall. I've seen documents with 200, 300 such specifications, technical requirements, that still don't get to the gist of what does the system need to do. Modern software development tends to use various aspects of the agile model, and one is user stories. So I'm going to recommend to you to think in terms of user stories. I'm going to take you through the user stories for a remote monitoring solution. What are user stories? They're just short, simple descriptions of something that the system needs to do for a particular person or role, a persona. They should follow this template. As a blank, I want blank so that blank. So let's think of a requirement for a couch, a user story for a couch. As a couch potato, I want 3 cup holders so I don't have to get up from my couch when I'm watching TV. So that's all it is. It's as a blank, I want the system to do this so that I solve a certain problem, like not getting up while I'm watching TV. By the way, I'm not a couch potato, and no offense if you are. So that's what user stories are. And what I've done is documented 8 user stories here. So the first, as a monitor, I need to be able to specify the documents that I expect the site to provide. We probably all know there's a reference model for this, the TMF reference model and the subset ISF components. So you can say, no, that's what I want them to provide, and you're right. But virtually every study will have changes to that reference model. I also want these other documents. I don't need these other documents. So I need to be able, as a monitor, to communicate to the site that these are the specific files, et cetera, that I want. Right now I'm speaking about essential documents. As a site administrator, be careful here, we just changed personas. Now I'm down at the site. I need to be able to load documents very easily into the application. I can't spend 10 minutes with version control, with stages, with review and approves of documents, if all I really want to do is load final documents, because I can't waste time or become frustrated. So that's the second of my 8 user stories. As a site administrator, so I'm still down at the site, I need to be sure that the documents are secure so that only the right people can see them. I'm responsible for this information. I need to be very confident that that the access is correct and they're protected, because I may be legally responsible. Now we're back at the monitor side. So now we've got files in the system. As a monitor, I want to be able to see those documents and files. I want to be able to view them. And very importantly, I want to comment on them. I want to put yellow stickies on them and say there's a missing signature or this form is out of date. The same things I would do if I was on site. And I want to do that because I am responsible to confirm that the documentation is complete and accurate. So again, I'm talking about essential documents here in the basic document inspection process. So that's the fourth. So now we've got files in the system. The monitor is looking at them and making comments. Now, as a monitor, I do more than look at documents. So I want to be able to document activities that don't relate to the documents per se. I want to share monitoring notes that are on qualifications of people, interview notes. I need to have a place and a way to share other observations and issues and even create actions for the site staff. So now I'm kind of going from the documentation function to an overlap with the quality function where no, I have observations. I need people to take corrective actions. We may not use that language as a monitor, but it's the same idea. Monitoring is a combination of documentation-based activities and process-based activities. And the right solution has to do both. It has to create tasks and activities and track those. We're back at the site now. I see I've got some comments from the monitor. I need to be able to react to those. I need to be able to address the issues, add the signature to that document. And I need to do that so I can fix those things, remediate them, and communicate their status back to the monitor. So actions are created, tasks are assigned, notifications are delivered, alerts are created, and now I react to those. One more time. All right, thank you for that. I looked at your documents, I created action items, I had other things for you to address. Now I want to see what items are missing, what the status is. So I need to quickly do a what's missing from this file, what's not final yet, so I can monitor the progress of the study, I can monitor the quality of what's being done. And lastly, as a monitor, wouldn't it be great if I could move items easily from the ISF space where I'm working with the site to a trial master file space on behalf of the sponsor? Wouldn't that be a terrific thing? That would allow me to save time and effort of moving them manually. So those are 8 user stories that I think are at the heart of a system for doing remote monitoring. And I give those to you for your own thought thinking of what else would you add. And I encourage you to create user stories as you speak to vendors of solutions, and think in user stories, not just in technical requirements. As I said, you can meet lots of technical requirements, but never meet the functional need the way the users need it. Now here's a big topic, and it's got a question mark rather than the number 9. As a monitor, how do I want to handle source files and patient records? How do I want to do SDV? And right now, the state of our technologies is, well, I can access another system directly. I can get a login to an EMR provided by someone else. This is definitely done. It's perfectly fine. It's legal. There's obstacles to it, and they're mostly technical obstacles, meaning it's on a private network. I need network access. I need to go through a virtual private network. IT needs to approve that. I need permissions. So there's complexities in that, and there's complexities in the access to an EMR system that you may not be a first-hand user of. So there's challenges with that. And the alternative is, nope, I want you at the site to extract the things I want and put them in this ISF file where I can see them. So that's another approach. And it has other obstacles. It has obstacles that even though I can tell you a system is HIPAA compliant, 21 Part 11 compliant, even though I'm very comfortable with that, doesn't mean the site is comfortable with it. So the site wants to know, can I really do that? Should I do that? Why would I take that risk? I can't do that. I'm not sure I can do that. Or can I redact them and do that automatically? So this area, I'm not purporting to know the solution. I'm purporting to say, this is an aspect of remote monitoring, the whole SDV side, that I think we don't have universal solutions yet, and that are going to be solved piecemeal, project by project, case by case. Barb, that's where I was going to pause for a second and take a question or two, if you have an appropriate question or two. I'm not looking at the questions, I just see some have come in. Anything you want to ask?
Well, there's a couple here, but well, one of them is long, and I think it's better if you read it than me read it to you, because I don't think you'll understand it.
Okay.
So it's sent from Patricia. So it's a great question, but it's easier if you kind of read it and then
I understand
answer
completely.
it. Yeah.
Hold on, I just went to Q&A, but I didn't see it. Okay. Hi, Patricia. CRO was selected by funding agent due to the CRO wagging the sponsor at every term. I love that term, wagging the sponsor. I've used a different approach to it, Patricia, which is that CROs and sponsors sometimes are wagging the tail of the sites, where the sites have to comply with what they're being asked to do. So yes, and Patricia's going on to ask about the risk exposure and getting agreement on all of this, because, okay, we've got sponsors, CROs, sites, and we need to figure out how we're going to do this in a way that they all agree that's the system we'll use, whose risk is it, who's liable, and are we all comfortable we can do that. So I don't have an answer. I'm going to answer Patricia in an email, but the issue is exactly on target. The second question I see is, do we need to redact the medical with records if we sent them securely to the sponsor, since we have a BAA, et cetera? The answer is no, but that functionality is becoming available and people like it. I shouldn't say no. You know, when one speaks in these areas, one should always say, I am not an expert, I'm not an attorney. My impression is no, that systems that are designed appropriately and compliant, those records can go into. However, please don't say Ken Lownie said it. I don't have those credentials. I will tell you that people are adopting redaction technologies that can do things with AI technologies to automatically redact, to take the concern away. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. As they say, we have the technology. All right, I am going to move to my penultimate section. I'm at 12:38. And I'm going to finish in about 3 minutes, and then we'll just do questions if there are any. So my goals have been to get us all on the same page about monitoring, get us all on the same page about remote monitoring and where it stands, then take you through some technology thoughts about what a system should look like. Now, that's great, but we're in the middle of the COVID crisis. How do you do this faster? Many systems in life sciences and clinical operations, the time from onboarding to production use is measured in many months, 6 months, 9 months. Certainly a year is not unheard of. That's just unacceptable. So what would be a faster way to start adopting these technologies? And all I have is what I've learned, my best practices, both in this situation and from other technologies. Not sure why that slide is there. I'll come back to that. I may be missing a slide. Be funny if I have to do this out of my head. Bear with me 1 second, please. That's embarrassing. Oh, there it is. It's just misordered, I apologize. This is a fast path model for thinking about deploying remote monitoring technologies. So of course there's analysis, there always is. What are you looking for? For me, use the user stories. What's the scope of your remote monitoring goals? Is it all about the documentation? Do you want to do more, etc.? So there's a bit of analysis, not a lot, to be honest. Get the user stories, get them straight, go to market, find some solutions. Then, really big point, section 2, if you want to move fast, stop the madness. Don't do demos with 14 companies. Try to compare them, form a committee, choose the best 3, have a bake-off. Just don't do that. You're wasting months and months of time. Get your hands on the software. Do an internal trial quickly, I'll say immediately. There's no substitute for that. If your goal is to choose a good fit for yourselves, and your goal is to reduce risk that it won't work for you, then the answer is start using the system. So demand a free, completely supported trial and start using it internally in some kind of a trial model. I just think there's no replacement for that. If the goal is the 2 things, I want to choose the right one that fits, and I want to make sure that the vendor is solid and supports it, then use it. It's the only way that you'll really know, and it's far better than a bake-off with 3 best and final and trying to choose one. All I can say is I'm 60 years old now. Trust me on this. It's a much better solution. It solves the problem of reducing risk and being sure there's a good fit. So then choose. But what I mean here isn't necessarily choose the vendor, choose the software. I'm saying choose the right study and the right sites. So if you have this flexibility, the ideal way to start here is with a simpler study with some sites that you've been working with before, for instance, if you're a CRO, where the players are known, the competence is understood, and they're on board and want to do this. Avoid complexity and avoid strangers. That's what I would do. And don't think you're going all in here. You can do a study that has different methodologies, different monitoring plans for different sites, as long as they're documented as part of the plan. So I'm not saying go all in here and bet the farm, as they say. I'm saying define an initial goal, some use of the technologies, and put it into play. And I think you can get there in a couple of months from the day you decide you want to do remote monitoring. I think that's easily done, and we've done it. Because the important point is iterate. You know, the agile model we use in software says we work in sprints, define a piece of the problem, solve it, and then repeat it and keep doing that. So it's a big loop of iterations. And that's how I see this going. A small, simple study with a couple of sites doing remote, and then a little bit bigger study with more sites doing remote and more things remotely. So there's an iterative model of expanded use moving to it becoming the new dominant way of doing business. So my watchwords on the bottom: practical, limited, and highly iterative. Life sciences approaches in general have traditionally been big bang models. Let's buy this large piece of software, let's spend a lot of money and a lot of years building it to be just what we need. And I just don't think that's flexible enough for the world we're in right now. So faster solutions that you can iterate more quickly with. So that's the fast path model. I haven't put a lot in here on this. I have a white paper I'm writing on that, so I'm happy to provide that, and I'll tell you about that at the end. As I mentioned, that was out of order. This comes with a very modern commercials, I think, are 20 seconds, so I'll be 20 seconds. Agatha is a software company. We have 5 applications. They're all in the cloud. They're a lighter weight, quicker to deploy, and less expensive applications. One of those is for remote monitoring. We also have a trial master file solution, etc. Our remote monitoring solution is built based on the things I've shared and what we've learned. And the idea is it's ready to use, it's pre-validated, very fast to deploy. It allows the sharing within a 21 CFR compliant space and a HIPAA compliant space. And it goes beyond documents to also sharing tasks and monitoring those tasks and responding to tasks in almost a quality management system kind of way. That's the commercial. And that's where I want to leave it. As you guys perhaps put any questions in, I want you to know that there is a white paper that Barb, who spoke earlier, and myself have written. And it is, as they say, I suppose, in a cliche, fresh off the press. It's actually in a kind of pre-production, pre-publication mode. I put peer review, but this isn't scientific work, so I'm just being silly. It's not really in peer review, but I do have a complete version that's going towards publishing. And I'd love to share it with anyone here. It's not yet on our website because this is a somewhat preliminary version, but I'm gonna just go slowly and read my email, ken.lowney@agathalife.com. Ken.lowney, L-O-W-N-I-E, @agathalife.com. Just drop me a note if you'd like a pre-production copy of this white paper. And I'd love your comments back, of course. And I hope you get some value. It really is a long form of a lot of what I've presented today. And then, as I mentioned, there's going to be another one that's sort of on the fast path model for implementing remote monitoring technologies, where I'll be adding some meat to those thoughts as well. That's what we wanted to cover today. Barb, I'm not looking at chat. Do you have any other questions that have come in?
I just have one that asked, do you think that remote monitoring will, completely replace on-site visits, or how do you kind of see that going once we kind of start to come out of this COVID pandemic?
Reminder that, as usual, I was finishing these slides in the middle of the night, not the last minute, that the last slide was supposed to do that. And in the white paper, Barb and I do talk about that. This is my own view. I have spoken to FDA people. I've spoken to lots of smart people, more than 100 conversations and interviews in the last couple of months on remote monitoring. And I think this is the consensus view and an intelligent view. Remote monitoring is getting a huge push by COVID. So we go from a dalliance to a torrid love affair. And that's just true. We need these technologies. We can't have clinical studies stop. So I think it's a big push of acceptance. On the other hand, I don't think by any means this is it. Okay, no more travel. I think the hybrid model will persevere. The reasons for my thinking are that on the one hand, the economics are so strong. Many of you who do budgets know that the cost of travel to sites for monitoring and quality activities is enormous. It's a big number. And the potential savings is just too high, and economics wins in the end. So there'll be a lot of use of these technologies. On the other hand, I just don't think you can replace all aspects of the monitoring and quality function without site visits for some activities. So I think there'll be less site visits, less frequent, and more focused on specific things. And as I mentioned during the presentation, I don't think we yet have the right solution for source data verification on how to do that the same way every time easily. I can picture that solution for those of you who care, which is an industry standard that allows the exchange of source documents in a secure packeted way so that every system, every EMR, our system, every system can exchange packets of source documents that are fully secure and authenticated. So I can picture that, but we need a standard for the exchange of those documents, and we're not there yet. So as usual, Barb, quick question, long answer. I think these technologies for remote monitoring and the whole process is on the ascend. It's now climbing quickly, but it won't replace entirely. I think there'll always be site visits as part of the methodologies that we use. Anything else?
No, I think we answered everything that was there. And I just want to remind everyone that we are going to be giving out a copy of the slides to everyone that came today. So a couple people have asked for those.
So you'll get the slides in an email. If you're interested in the preliminary white paper, please let us know. And I just want to say thank you. Really pleasant to meet you all virtually. And I think we're finishing right on time. And Carol, I got your email already. Carol asked, so thank you. We'll talk to you all soon and hopefully see you at a conference in person soon. Bye-bye, everybody.